Hey folks, welcome back to another HP Gaming GameLINK video. I am here today to talk to you all one-on-one a little bit, I guess you could say, about a new favorite aspect of this wonderful hobby of ours. What am I talking about? Come with me as we take a deep dive into the world of solo gaming. Hello folks and welcome back. If you don't know me by now, you should, because we are destined to become the very best of friends. My name is Matt, and as I said at the tease, I'm here today to talk about a favorite part of this wonderful hobby of ours, the solo gaming experience. Now, a lot of people find this particular type of gaming polarizing, and I hope that I might be able to bring you around to my way of thinking. But again, these are just my opinions and my opinions alone, so by all means take from that what you will. Let me preface this by saying that we are currently in isolation because this guy right here, in his other job, other profession as a wedding photographer, fortunately was able to work a lot of jobs in 1 week, and as a result, caught what we're calling the spicy cough. I must say I am feeling fantastic. I haven't really shown too many symptoms, but I had a violent coughing fit for about 2 seconds. Did a test, checked it again to make sure it wasn't a false positive, and here we are. So because I've got everyone here living with me in isolation at the moment, and I've locked myself in this makeshift recording studio, it's made me realize that the solo gaming experience as it stands, when it's done right, is something that you can really miss when you're not able to have that time. So I guess solo gaming, I'm not talking about, solo gaming can be defined in so many ways. But the solo gaming I'm talking about is from games that have a specific solo mode either built into them, or they are built specifically for one player, a la Box One and a few other games that I'll come to mention shortly. I guess there's a lot of benefits to solo gaming. And I have had a few colleagues of mine sort of poo-poo the idea, and I'm hoping that I can maybe bring them round to this way of thinking. Solo gaming is something that I find therapeutic, I guess, for lack of a better term. I find it to be an engaging experience when it's done right. I find it to be interesting how rules and gameplay thematic ideas can be incorporated into an experience for one player when it's originally a game that's designed for a multiple player experience. I find the lore of the worlds interesting. If I find the lore of the worlds interesting enough, I should say, then I'm going to get more out of the experience as well, because that is my jam. I love getting into the nitty-gritty of these wonderful board game tabletop experiences. Pros and cons, I guess, of solo gaming. First of all, there's no arguments about which game you're going to play. You get to play your favorite. You're the one in the driver's seat. It's your call to make, and the folly of making a bad decision rests solely on your shoulders. So I guess that's another thing as well. There is no let's play this. No, I don't want to play that. It's literally your way or the highway, which is kind of good as well, because it means I can play those meaty games I can't really play with other folk. There's no downtime between turns. Literally, when you finish your go, it is usually your go again, and you can just keep barreling along. This is not entirely true, obviously, because most of these games have some automa that takes place in between turns to keep the game going and obviously keep the challenge alive. But being able to have your turn and instantly start thinking about what you're going to do next without any downtime means you can take as long or as little as you like for your turns. You can take the time to really work through moves. You can overthink it, like chess, for example. And there's no one going to be sitting at the table saying, come on, hurry up. No emoji coming in if you're playing online, with tapping the watch, all that sort of stuff. I'm looking at you, Catan Universe. It's one of those games, one of those things where you can really take your time to really appreciate the experience, which is something not everyone, real life players will allow you to do. On top of that, you can play most cooperative games these days solo. So your Pandemic, your legacy games that are usually cooperative based, they can all be played solo, which means you don't need to have a plethora of players, and you can continue the same story without having to rely on everyone getting back around the same table. I think Pandemic in particular, one of our new ones, Wrath of the Lich King, being able to play that as a solo mode, even though you still use 3 different characters, you're still making all the decisions. It's still a solo experience, and you win or lose as a team, even if there's just one player around the table. And I find that a lot of games now are actually having solo modes incorporated into them, but not feeling just tacked on. A lot of the Kickstarters, when I first started getting into the Kickstarter side of things, had solo modes as an unlockable stretch goal. And it was literally a slight rules change, very haphazardly tacked on and billed as a big solo experience when it just wasn't. Nowadays, though, we find solo experiences being built into the games from the ground up. So when you play those solo modules, it's really a great time. And I'll come to some of my favorites in a little while. Now, I will say this too, there are a lot of naysayers out there, more than I would have experienced or would have thought there was, particularly people who classify themselves as serious gamers, serious tabletop gamers, I should say. Solo gaming, that's boring, you need to have people around the table. And yes, for a competitive game, like Catan is boring on its own. You just cannot play Catan solo unless you're playing against an AI computer opponent on Catan Universe or something like that. And even then, there's only so much fun you can have before you start getting absolutely bored out of your brain. You need that competitive, you need that take that action, all that sort of stuff. However, I put it to you, naysayers, those of you that out there in tabletop land who go, solo game is not for me, it's rubbish. When you play the most cutting edge, industry leading video games out there, how many people are those usually for? When you're playing a campaign mode game, sitting down to play Halo Infinite, not multiplayer, I'm talking about the campaign. When you're sitting down to play Shadow of the Tomb Raider, when you're sitting down to play Horizon, any of those crazy new releases that are out there, you'll find their campaign modes are designed for one player. 8 to 10 to 12 hours of gameplay for one player. The tabletop space is no different. There are, yes, admittedly, the games don't necessarily last that long. Some of them do, and I'll mention those later. But there is not the single player mode game experiences will give you the same, if it's done right and if it's done well, will give you the same quality game experience that you'll get out of a video game, but in a 45-minute to 120-minute session. And that's fantastic. It's an amazing experience, and I think it's not to be poo-pooed. And I'll give you some classic examples of some of the best solo experiences that I've had. Dune Imperium has a great solo module, also a module for 2 players where a third house is brought into the fray. The solo mode, I have hit that to the table time and time again. In fact, you can actually watch a solo play up here. Of Dune Imperium, and having to take on the houses and having their own deck which controls their movement, and watching as they wreak havoc and build their troops and fill up their garrison and marching onwards toward imminent defeat of your entire army. It's quite a stressful experience, and Dune Imperium is one of my favorite games at the moment anyway. But it offers quite the challenge in terms of the solo mode, and it's adjustable in terms of its difficulty as well, which I really dig too. Another one of late that I've found it to be an amazing solo experience is my friend here, Get to the Checkpoint, and you can watch a playthrough of that one up here as well. Get to the Checkpoint is a wonderful little dice chucker push your luck game, which basically is filled with 80s action movie tropes from Predator to, I don't know, all sorts of other, mostly every Arnold Schwarzenegger film ever made in the 1980s is in this game. And it is literally dice chucking, crazy fun. It is impossible, almost virtually impossible to beat. I get closer and closer every time I play. And as much as I hate dice games because I suck at dice rolls, as my daughter will tell you, it is a game that I keep getting back to the table. It is that good, and it is designed for one player. Another one that's brand new and has just arrived, and I have to say, this particular module for this game is just beautiful. It is simple, it is intricate, and it offers quite the challenge, along with varying degrees of difficulty as well. I am talking about Foundations of Rome and the Gardens of Ceres expansion. Now this pits you against an AI god, and she is basically trying to claim as much of Rome back from all of the architectural designs and buildings and put as much parkland in there as possible. It is brutal. It is cunning, it is conniving, and it is very, very expensive to buy some of those deed cards when Ceres has launched, thousands and thousands of silver on them to add up their cost. And it is quite a challenge, even at just the beginner level as well. Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion is another one that I really enjoy. It's one up here. It's one that is a very, very meaty campaign game, sort of a Gloomhaven light, I guess, an introduction, a prologue to the main Gloomhaven experience. And it is fantastic to see what happens, which adventures you go, which routes you take as you explore this sprawling city that is literally coming alive as you play through the scenarios. A wonderful gameplay scenario where you're playing two different characters double-handed, but it's still a great solo experience. And some of those scenarios are 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on which scenarios and how difficult you're making it for yourself. And it's an amazing experience to sit around the table on your own late at night and just go for it. But what is my favorite solo gaming experience? Let me show you. It's this one, Arkham Horror, the card game. Now, I know a lot of people might be saying, oh gosh, Matt's going to bang on about Arkham Horror again. But there is a reason, and there is a reason that some of the videos and content I've done on Arkham Horror have absolutely skyrocketed in terms of their view count. So one of the most popular videos I have on the channel here, which you can check up here, is about Arkham Horror, and is about, a buyer's guide, Redux, all that sort of stuff. There is so much going on in Arkham Horror, and I think it's something that everyone needs to give. Okay, I'll preface this by saying that maybe it's not for everyone. The theme may not suit everybody. I know part of the reason that I've only played this solo is because of the content and the subject matter. I mean, I can't really, get Charlotte and Blair out there playing this crazy game about demons and monsters and ancient evils and everything else as well. It's probably not suitable for them and would give them, a bajillion nightmares and keep me up later than I usually am anyway. But Arkham Horror as a solo experience where it's literally one investigator, the only person who understands the secrets about what's really going on behind the shadows, that's thematically amazing. And the fact that no one really believes what it is you're experiencing unless, depending on the scenario that you're playing, building a deck of cards to try and, play to your character's strengths and exploring the world of Arkham as it evolves as a living card game is absolutely brilliant. Now, the original core box had 3 scenarios in it, which were fantastic as a tutorial. But as you get into the campaign scenarios, we're talking about video game experiences when you're effectively having 8 to 10 hours of gameplay. The campaign boxes start to bring into that, and you start to have that same experience where you want to go out and find and collect all the different clues, and you want to try and find all the different endings. But knowing that the way you take your way through the game and the way you play through the scenarios can potentially change the outcome of not just that scenario, but the overarching campaign, your decisions actually matter. And that's something that's a fantastic solo experience. Yes, okay, it can be played with multiple players. Yes, the new core box allows for 4 players out of the box. But the most I've ever played Arkham Horror, the card game, is with 2 people. And admittedly, the other player at the time wasn't as experienced, so was sort of being led by me, but having to rely on someone else when it's a life or death struggle, as it is so often the case in these scenarios, really didn't do it for me. I almost prefer to take this out of the box on my own to see where the scenarios take me. Yes, I want to play this with my wife and I want to show her the ropes and get her involved. Yes, I know some people out there who would absolutely love this as a cooperative experience. But the other side of it is too, when you bring in an extra player to Arkham Horror, you're adding 45 minutes to an hour per scenario, which probably sounds like a lot, but you've got to then think about how can I help my fellow player here, my investigator, complete the goals? Do you then alter your deck to complement theirs. You're thinking there's too many variables, whereas if you're going it alone, you've got your core deck of cards, you know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and if you see an enemy that's too hard, you can try and evade and get out of dodge. The fact that you are able to, customize that deck and use those cards as you get more and more sets to build a bigger and better investigator with stronger abilities. And then you've got the option of that character can be killed off. Your character that you've spent so long and so many hours and hours and hours building up and gaining experience for can be eliminated from that campaign, never to be seen again. It's terrifying to think that, you spent all that time and have a character just gets written out of the story, and then you've got to start fresh 5 scenarios in when the stakes are so high. It's brutal, but I bloody love it. It's an amazing experience, and one I'm happy to say is very worth staying up late for. Once everyone else has gone to bed, you break out the playmat, set up the decks, set up the scenario, look at where you are, and then dive deep into the theme of the Arkham and the Cthulhu mythos. It's just an amazing experience, and Fantasy Flight have just smashed this IP out of the park. Like, it is literally probably one of their biggest sellers. It's one of our biggest sellers. It is a fantastic game, and the new expansion boxes that are coming out, the campaign boxes, which put everything into one package as opposed to having to go through the little mythos packs like we used to do. It's a great time for Arkham Horror fans. It's a great time for people to get into Arkham Horror. And I do strongly suggest that if you have thought about this, but you don't really have anyone else who's necessarily considering it, have a look at a solo game. It is a fantastic experience. And once you understand the concepts and how it plays, you'll find you'll break it out a lot more often than you think you will. It is literally a fantastic gaming experience. Thematically, knocked it out of the park. It's amazing. But solo gaming, I think I've gone on about it. I think it's amazing. I think solo gaming is a wonderful experience that is only now just coming to the fore. I mean, Box 1 is an amazing solo experience. I've talked about that on the channel. Yes, you could play that with multiple people, but being able to lock myself away and do Box 1 and play Box 1 to completion on my own, that was a great experience that I can't even talk about, which is fantastic. Unbroken, it finally arrived. Unbroken is one that hits the table on the regular as well. It went through so many crazy developmental and fulfillment hell because of the different issues they had with their producers and that other mob. But being able to get it to the table and play the game for what it is showcases just how good a solo gaming experience can be. Hunted is one we've played on the channel. That's another great solo experience where effectively you are, an LA cop in New York or a New York cop in LA. Sorry, my apologies. And you are effectively fighting upwards of Kobayashi Tower, Nakatomi Plaza, to save your wife from terrorists. It is a fantastic card dice battling game of epic proportions. There is a lot to be said for solo gaming. I think, as I said, we're on the precipice of some amazing things that are able to be happening through tabletop gaming. And some of the great video game franchises are out there that have a great solo experience are now starting to see, okay, maybe there's something here that we can do on a tabletop form. So, it's a great time to be a part of the industry in that respect. I'm a big fan of solo gaming. It's quite evident by all my rant that I've just, my verbal diarrhea I've just spewed forth. But I think there is method in the madness here. Being able to solo game, I miss it. I haven't been able to do it for a little while because obviously we are here in isolation and all living together. So don't get me wrong, being able to play games with everybody is fantastic, but I miss breaking this out. I miss setting it up and just having it set in one location and coming back to it when I can. So I think that's something that I'm going to have to get back to, and I'm going to really enjoy rediscovering that experience. I guess, though, what solo experiences have you had? What are you playing? What games come to mind when you think of solo experiences? Are there any particular games out there that I haven't mentioned that maybe I should check out? By all means, let me know in the comments below. It would be remiss of me as well to not thank our Patreon subscribers for all of their support. We really appreciate you guys allowing us to do all this crazy stuff, especially while we are in isolation. So thank you very much. If you haven't already, folks, smash that subscribe button. Give us a like. Tell us what you think about the solo gaming experiences I've just mentioned, or if there's any more that I've missed. And while you're out there, folks, playing games, hopefully you are getting back to the table. Hopefully you are being social again and remembering what it's like to be in touch with one another. Make sure you play more games. Make sure you stay safe. And above all, we'll see you next time when we get back to the table very soon. Until then, it is bye for now.